Hey, Damian Mason coming at you to talk about meat. That's right, we're going to talk about meat like this lovely seasoned pork loin that I'm going to put on the grill and put in my belly in a couple of hours. We're also going to talk about decisions. Decisions that you, me, all of America, consumers, and our economy and the industry of agriculture must make as it pertains to meat. You've heard a lot in the last week or two about the meat industry from me and from all of the media. We also now are hearing about meat shortages that I warned about clear back on Easter Sunday with meat plants closing. You see, processing plants are required to take our chickens, our pigs, and our beef animals, our cattle, and turn them into cuts of meat just like the one that I'm going to put on my grill. You knew that. Well, these plants are closing down because their employees are contracting coronavirus. Some of them are asymptomatic, but still we have to shut them down, and this has caused quite the issue, and we're going to see these shortages. Now, technically, there's no such thing from an agricultural economics perspective as a shortage. There's just a decrease in supply, and when you have a decrease in supply and a demand that stays constant, what does that do? It increases the price. We've already seen this. Ground beef is up 40% in terms of its price from just a month ago. This is going to be a problem ongoing because, again, when you have less supply, the consumer is going to feel this. So let's talk about the choices we can make. As consumers, as a country, whether it's politically or legislatively or economically, we've got to make these decisions. So let's talk about the first choice we can make. We could let economics work themselves out. And by that I mean, let's just assume that we can allow the price situation to go as it's going to go. This favors the more affluent people. Now, meat has always been something that was consumed more when your economics improved. The United States of America is the meat-consumingest country on earth. We're also the wealthiest country on earth. Makes sense, right? So if we allow the economics to work themselves out, sadly, the poor in our country are going to suffer. Those children, those families that are most in need of protein in their diet to make their bodies healthy are going to suffer. Whereas you and me might be able to afford a $10 pound of burger or a $20 pound of pork chops, should it ever come to that. Those that are at the bottom end of the spectrum are going to suffer the greatest because they will be least able to afford that. What's option number 2? Meat rationing. Now, right now, we're seeing this at the Costco's and the Kroger's and the Walmarts of the world where they are actually limiting your purchase, kind of like they did with paper towels, napkins, and toilet paper just a few weeks ago. Please, dear customers, only buy 1 or 2 packages. That's what's going on now, and it's mostly voluntary. And it's also been peaceful. But what if we get to a situation where the shortages, the supply decrease gets even worse? What are we going to see then? We might see it not be so peaceful, if you know what I'm saying. Meat rationing at this point is a voluntary situation instituted by the retailers. But what if it became that you got coupons, vouchers from the government? This happened in World War II for such items as butter and sugar and rubber and gasoline. Would we see something like that? We possibly could. Option number 3, because we have a choice to make, is to turn to our alternatives. Plant-based alternatives. Companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger, right? Here's the problem. We lost about 1/3 of our processing capacity just last week, meaning we processed only 2/3 of the normal amount of hogs, chickens, and beef last week. Chicken's not as bad as pork, and pork was a bit better than beef. But the point is, we're off by about 1/3. So how much longer can we then not see that in the grocery store? The point is, it's going to start resonating even more because we're processing so many fewer animals. And you'd say, well, let's just go to switch to Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat. Right now, our consumption of plant alternatives is less than 1% of the actual protein on our plate. You understand what I'm saying? That what we consume in way of plant-based meat is so small. It's it's a fraction of 1% compared to the real meat that we eat. These companies would have to work overtime to even make a dent in what we've lost, and they don't probably have the time. Another option would be for us to just eat less meat. And that, of course, has been offered by our vegetarian and our vegan friends. But as I point out in my book, Food Fear, Americans like their meat. We eat 220 pounds of it per year. That's right, about 58 pounds of beef, about 52 pounds of pork, about 100 pounds of chicken, about 16 pounds of turkey. So it adds up to being about 220 pounds. On top of that, another 15 to 16 pounds of seafood. So Americans could eat less meat, that's for sure. But they haven't shown a propensity for doing so, nor do they even act like they're very interested in doing so. So what's that mean? Well, we still want our burger. We could import it. So far in this year of 2020, we have imported 774 million pounds of beef. And you're saying, okay, that's good. Now I can go still get my burger at Wendy's. I can still go to the grocery store and pick up a pound of burger to make tacos for my family tonight. Yes, you can. But is this going to be a long-term solution? Our number one importer came from Canada. They also have coronavirus issues with their meat processing facilities. After them was Australia. They fared a little bit better. How much meat are they going to be able to import us? That's a question. But then when you get to number 5, Nicaragua. If you went to Nicaragua, would you trust the water you drink? Yet we're going to bump up our beef imports from countries like Nicaragua, which is on the list, Honduras, which is on the list, and Namibia, an African country that's on the list that I'm guessing if you went there on vacation, you wouldn't even feel safe drinking the water. Now, are we going to sell to a country of people who say things like, I want to know where my food comes from? The idea that it's okay to eat beef from a third world country? I think there's some concern there. I believe that a consumer that says, I want to know that my food is safe and I want to know where it comes from and I want to know that the FDA and the USDA and all of those organizations that I fund with my tax dollars have made sure that my product is good, safe, pure, and wholesome. I don't know that importing is going to be the answer. Then, of course, there's the other option, and that is to open the facilities. President Trump caught some flack from the Union of Food and Commercial Workers, United Food and Commercial Workers is the union, and also from his detractors. And then organizations like the Environmental Working Group, which really aren't a group working for the environment, they're a group working against meat consumption and modern agriculture. They decided it would be great fundraising to come out and lash out against this whole idea of using the National Defense Act to keep meat plants open. Here's why it was a good idea. When we have a stable food supply, we have a stable society. Remember that every accomplishment in the United States of America is predicated on an abundant and safe food supply so that you can concentrate on doing what you do best. When there is no meat at the grocery store, does that create some uncertainty? Absolutely. Does it create some instability? It has the tendency to do so. We need to prioritize testing and pay hazard pay to the workers there, as I've been calling for, to realize that keeping our meat plants open is going to keep our country stable and strong. When we look weakened, when we have less food, when we are unstable, this world is a very aggressive place. You don't think that our enemies would like to take advantage of our situation. There's another thought here. I've heard the criticism from people saying, well, it's because there's 4 big meat companies that own all these meat processors. And it's true. 80% of the meat processing is done in plants that are owned by 4 big companies, Tyson, Cargill, Smithfield, and JBS. Here's the thing. If the issue is workers contracting coronavirus, whether they're doing that at the plant or in their homes where they live or in their vans when they drive together to the work, would it really matter if those plants were owned by 4 companies or 40 or 400? You see, it's not necessarily on those companies that the coronavirus is being spread within the community of the meat processing plant workers. Those are the choices we have to make. We can either let economics work themselves out, which might be very ugly for the more demographically, socioeconomically challenged folks in our country that depend on animal protein in their diet much as you or I do. Do we let meat rationing come into being? And is that what America really needs to do, or what should happen? It's not happened since World War II. Are we going to turn to meat alternatives? I've told you the limitations there. They just don't have the possibility. They don't have the capacity to do so. What about imports? I believe there's going to be some real issues there. The American consumer doesn't want to turn to imports from other countries that they might deem to be a less quality product than we can produce right here. And then, of course, there's the issue of opening up the plants and doing all that we can to keep these people safe, which we should. They are frontline workers. They are just as important as healthcare. The meat processing plant workers are the Rosie the Riveters in this war against coronavirus and in keeping our country strong. I'm Damian Mason. Thank you for tuning in. I can always talk to you about meat. I will keep you abreast of information and insights about the business of food and agriculture. Until next time.